So we have millions of federal employees trying to figure out what to do with this delayed resignation offer that's on the table. We know we currently have a deadline of February 6th, and there's a lot of confusion about all of these benefits and who qualifies for what and how this is all going to work. We are doing this series to identify some of the various parts of these benefits that need a little bit of a deeper dive to understand how they work for a lot of different type of people. So today's episode is going to be all about the thrift savings plan and how to access this account and hopefully avoid some penalties. So my name is Kowalik. I am the founder of ProFeds. And I welcome you to the Fed Impact Podcast, where we offer candid insights on your federal retirement. So if you're new to the show, welcome. We do retirement training for federal employees all over the place, and so we're delighted to have you here. So for today's episode, we're going to talk specifically about the thrift savings plan, how to access that program, and how to make sure that you avoid those penalties if you can. Okay, and if you like what we're talking about today and the manner in which we're doing it, I hope that you'll subscribe so you're sure not to miss an episode. So let's talk about the IRS rules. The IRS has stated that they intend for you to access this money no earlier than 59 and a half. But of course, things happen. And they've made some special exceptions for the thrift savings plan and other accounts like it, like 401ks. Essentially saying, if you retire or separate from the employer who holds that account for you, in this case, the government, you are able to draw on that money penalty-free as long as you retired or separated in the calendar year in which you turned 55 or older. Okay, 55 or older. So if you're 54, could that count? Maybe. It depends. Are you going to turn 55 in that calendar year? If so, you're good. If you're still going to be 54 by the end of that calendar year, that's no good. Okay, so if that happens, let's say you're 53, just to cut any ambiguity out of this. If you're 53 when you leave federal service, regardless if you're actually retiring or separated, the IRS doesn't care, and neither does the TSP. If you retire or separate at 53 and want to have any of that money from your TSP sent to you to spend, you will have a penalty, a 10% early withdrawal penalty on every dollar you take out of the TSP from that moment at 53 in this example, all the way to 59 and a half. You don't just get penalized up to the 55 mark. You get penalized all the way to 59 and a half. So this is a super, super important decision that I want to make sure that you understand how it works. If you do, in fact, find yourself retiring prior to that 55 mark that the IRS has set in place, know that there are some very limited ways that you're able to access the TSP without penalty, but it does lock you into a certain method for taking money out of the TSP. So it's not impossible, but if you want to be able to access your TSP however you wish and not have any penalty, making sure that you're abiding by that 55 rule is definitely the way to go. Okay, so you must retire or separate in the year in which you turn 55 or older. Of course, there are exceptions to every rule, right? So let's say you're a law enforcement officer and you're thinking of going ahead and leaving federal service, whether it's through this rule or otherwise, with respect to this offer that's being made. You decide to leave and you're 50. You are able to draw off of your TSP with no penalty. So if you are eligible to retire under a law enforcement pension, you are eligible to draw from the TSP penalty free. So age 55 with 20 or any age with 25, those are the rules for law enforcement. If that is in fact the category that you fall in, then you are eligible to draw from your TSP with no penalty. Now, keep in mind, you still have to pay the taxes on the money if it's traditional money. So you're not getting away from that, but we would love for you to avoid any penalties. I need to stress something because I don't know why this part gets confused so often. But if you do not retire or separate at the right age, again, 55 or older, that calendar year in which you turn 55 or older for our regular employees or the special exception for law enforcement types, if you do not meet that requirement at the moment that you separate, you need to know that the penalty will apply all the way until the time you are 59 and a half, not just until the 55 mark, all the way. I do want to also point out that this does not apply if you are taking the money from the thrift savings plan and putting it into another 401k. Maybe you go out and you get another job, or you move it to an individual retirement arrangement or an IRA out in the private sector. Okay, that is a company-to-company transfer, and there's no penalties at that time. It's only when you set to receive the money directly to be able to cash it and spend it. Okay, so definitely a lot to think about, but I do want to make a special point here with respect to TSP, and I've not covered this in the other videos, so it's really important that we cover it here, and that is between now and September 30th, in the eyes of the Thrift Savings Plan, you are still employed. In the eyes of the government, you are still employed. You're just not going to work. So you need to understand that if you are under 59 and a half, you will not be able to access money from the TSP between now and September 30th. Once you retire or separate at that point, then you will have access to the TSP. Okay, so let's say that you wanted to go ahead and leave federal service and open up a new business, and you're thinking, great, I'm 50 years old. I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to separate, and I'm going to take some money out of my TSP to start a new business. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do that out of the TSP because we have now a rule that requires you to be at least 59 and a half to access your TSP money prior to you leaving federal service. Okay. All right. So definitely a lot to think about with respect to TSP and frankly, all of your numbers. If this exercise of going through this delayed resignation process has made you scratch your head a little bit and wonder, do I have my retirement act together? I hope that if you answer no to that this is the encouragement that you've needed to get some help. Like I mentioned before, we do retirement training all over the country for tens of thousands of employees every year. I hope that you're one of them that gets to a workshop and starts to feel better about the decisions that you're able to make in this process, whether you take the delayed resignation or something else in the future. So you can find all of the workshops that we do all over the country, even some overseas, by going to fedimpact.com/attend. Again, you'll be able to see all the locations and be able to sign up right there. Okay, so hopefully today's episode has been helpful regarding the TSP, how to access it, and then, of course, how to avoid those penalties as well. If you want to keep updated on changing legislation, additional offers, or modifications to the current offer that we're in for the delayed resignation, pull out your phone, text the word podcast to 224-444-6144, and we will make sure to get you all the information that you need. Okay. And then, of course, on the podcast player that you're listening to right now, subscribe so you're sure not to miss an episode. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next episode.